Thank you. Good morning, kia ora, tēnā koutou katoa. We're back. How exciting. We're very fortunate to be back for 2025 with a full suite of councillors sitting around the table and to all of our staff that are going to guide us with the decisions that we will be making today on behalf of our district. So yeah, I think that at the end of last year, you know, we had a busy year last year, and it was nice to be able to have a little bit of time to, perhaps just consider what's really important to us and reflect on the district that we're representing. And I guess just one reflection that I had in the new year, I had the chance to go and join with Vince in Cheviot when they opened a new equestrian centre. And it came through for a licence or whatever paper it was through the council community committee meeting. But there were about 30 people there, mums and dads with their kids and their horses, and these people had just beavered away without any fuss or bother and created a really significant piece of infrastructure for, you know, those members of our community that are, you know, have got a horse or are in that sort of trade, and that sort of, you know, that's their gig. But I just thought it just reminded me of how lucky we are and how many people are doing things like that, and how quick we are to criticise, but actually we need to turn that around and actually we need to really celebrate, because it was, as I said, there was 20 or 30 people there. They just celebrated what they'd done by rolling their sleeves up and getting the job done. And you know, then there was talk that it could be a major attraction to passers-by going to the horse of the year, place to stop off and, you know, exercise their horse and blah blah. But I just thought it was a simple ceremony to celebrate, but it notwithstanding the amount of effort that it would have taken to raise the money, do all the working bees and achieve the result. And I just think that should be our year of focus for 2025. I did a bit of a Google, and actually it's a nod to Henry Ford, Gary, so you know, I thought you'd be pleased about that. But he said, yeah, that's right. Henry Ford said, coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, and working together is success. And I just thought, actually, that's what I think we're all driving and striving towards as a community, alongside our staff, to actually bring the success for the district that we're serving. So it kind of made a bit of sense to me. So, you know, I was just stoked that it wasn't, you know, a Holden story, that it was a Ford one, you know. But
yeah, the Mayor, I've got a book of quotes from Henry Ford, and I use one every week at the beginning and close of the Rotary meetings in Christchurch. Would you like the book? You could do the same here.
Well, we'll start with one and see how we go. See if we can live by that mantra, I guess, is my message. Anyway, great to have you all here, and let's celebrate life. So health and safety matters, nothing's changed since last year. Should we need to exit this building, either out the door that you entered or the door to my left, and the assembly point is in the same position for 2025, so that's great. We received no apologies to date, and as always, we will begin our meeting with the affirmation, a chance to let go what we've walked through the door with today and consider the job in front of us. So we do pledge that we will faithfully and impartially use our skills, wisdom and judgment throughout the discussions and deliberations ahead of us today, in order to make responsible and appropriate decisions for the benefit of the Hiranui district at large. We commit individually and as council to the principles of integrity and respect, and to upholding the values that we believe distinguish and enrich our district. Thank you. In regard to today's agenda, is there any conflict of interest that councillors want to note at this point? Right, thank you. And Graham, we're live streaming and we have our recording device? Thank you. Councillors, just want to check in, you have received the reserve management plan as a separate appendix. You should have that information to refer to one of our decision items today. Thank you. And first of all, what I'm going to do today, I just need to change the order of our program today. So I'm going to work through the minutes of the December meeting and the forward program and those items, and then I'm going straight to the financial report as an information report, and then we'll come back to our decision items. So that's to support Jace, who's got another appointment that he needs to attend to. So with your indulgence, councillors, that's what we will be doing as an order of business for today. Thank you. So if I may just work through the minutes of the 17th of December, and I guess what we're looking for here is matters of accuracy. If we just skip through those pages, pages 3, 4 and 5, 6 and 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and that's it. No corrections to those minutes. Would someone be willing to move that we accept those minutes? Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Fiona. Take those as a true and accurate record. All in agreement to that, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, that's carried. Thank you. I might do matters arising, and then we might look at the PE minutes, and assuming there is no discussion items, if there is, of course, we'll go into PE at the end of today's meeting. So we'll do matters arising first, and then we'll have a look at the PE minutes. So looking through those pages, just stepping through the pages, is there any matters arising that councillors have on pages 3 to 11? No matters arising? Fine, thank you, councillors. We'll move on. So just, if I may, just looking at the PE minutes, do any councillors wish to raise any topic within those PE minutes?
The right to an update.
Okay, if that's the case, we'll go into PE at the end of today then. Thank you. Assuming you're all comfortable with that, thank you. So looking at the forward work program, it's looking rather slim at this point. I guess it's just a change there on the 4th of February. That isn't a presentations meeting. I've taken the opportunity to offer the councillors a site visit, and we're going out to Lake Sumner on that day, so that just needs to be changed. Thank you, Graham. And I guess there'll be a lot populated into that as exec team work through their work. And looking at the Mayor's Diary on page 13, there's just a couple of corrections that I didn't pick up before the meeting, but on the 20th, it talks about 20th of December meeting with Rural Support Trust. It was actually a meeting with the Adverse Events Committee, and we met with Minister Mark Patterson. And then on the 13th of January, it's got catch up with Queen Mary Trust. Oh, I guess it was really that. It was the paperwork that Ria had to coach me in to get that application. So it probably was the Queen Mary Trust, but it was an application process that I needed some IT guidance with. Thank you. And then the working groups. Not sure whether there's any. Judith, do you have any updates in regard to the historic? Thank you.
You're probably just as able, Madam Mayor, as I am too. So there's a lot sort of going on with the Salter block. The main focus for me has been the restoration and earthquake strengthening. So that is progressing really well, and we're on track for reopening on NZAC Day. Focus this week is actually to do some work around what that opening will look like on NZAC Day. So Mari and Graham and I are catching up later in the week to progress that. There is work happening with the Queen Mary Trust, so Mari has joined the trust and the group. That's very much in its early stages. We're probably still storming, I think, on that one too.
Yeah.
Where we're going to go with that. Fundraising committee or task force is well advanced. There's a lot of documentation all being prepared in the background, booklets. The focus of the benefactors, there's a list, and we're working to work out who's got connections with who. So a lot has sort of happened with the fundraising. And in terms of WETA, we've had the second presentation. So you may recall, I think it was at the November meeting, I had a document that I handed around. And now we've had the second stage presentation of that concept. So we gave them quite a bit of feedback. So yeah, there's lots of strands happening on that project. Yeah.
I think it'd be quite good to have we think about how the trust, I mean, it's needs to reform, or, you know, whether it should come into here, because I mean, the trust has met, I'd say informally for about an hour online before Christmas, so I'm not sure, perhaps I need to just work that through with you, how that needs to be reported, or whether it's a different, separate. But it's not really a council working group either, so I just, no, we just need to manage that, so I just need to have we think about that maybe, and so we have a discussion of how that best could be facilitated for the members.
Yep.
So if we can do that, that'd be great. Yep. Did you want something else?
Just if we could jump back to the forward program, there's a workshop planned for the 11th of February in the afternoon. And potentially a council meeting to deal with an item, an extraordinary council meeting to deal with an item on that day. So I just wonder whether you can test availability.
Yeah, okay, we can do that. Yeah, I'll take that. Yeah, that's fine. No, but we can do that now. Graham alluded to it. So I'm not, it's scheduled for a strategy and community meeting day, but I'm not sure whether that meeting is going to go ahead. I'm looking to the chair and Judith for that. And if
I'm looking at Andrew, do we
okay.
have any reports for that?
I
For the
did,
11th.
yeah, I did have contact from Avril, and she did say that the walking and riding strategy is not ready, so if there were no reports, then we would.
okay. So regardless, that's scheduled for the morning anyway. What has been proposed, and I guess what Hamish is signalling, is that it's not a normal day for all councillors, it's a strategy and community day. However, Dan has an extraordinary, or a paper that needs to come from an extraordinary meeting, and following that we would have a workshop on local water done well, which would be a progression from today's workshop. So the signal really is to say other councillors that wouldn't normally have the 11th in their diaries be available to attend on that afternoon.
It will be, that was my question, it'll be the afternoon.
It'll be a 1 o'clock start.
Okay.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I think councils will have in their diary a workshop calendar appointment starting at 2.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Yeah, okay.
So they'll have all councils in it, but we are suggesting it starts a little bit earlier if possible.
Everybody happy with that?
Yep.
So we're looking at an extraordinary meeting at 1, so the variation is really instead of 2 o'clock, it's 1 o'clock. And then there would be a workshop to follow, but it would be, my opinion and my advice, probably it's better if everybody's in the room for that, for those days if possible, rather than, I guess Zoom would be available, but it's probably better for everybody to have that information.
And Madam Mayor, I think the extraordinary council, we think it'll only be a short one, so.
Yeah, okay. Is that clear as mud for everybody?
So the strategy and community meeting, is that going to go ahead, or
It's likely to be cancelled.
Yeah,
so I'll just keep that in the diary?
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, unlikely at this point, but it will be confirmed either by Andrew or yeah, Andrew probably on behalf of having a discussion with Corey. Whatever, yeah, whoever. Okay, clear? Radio. Thank you. Let's
Sorry, Mary, can I just clarify, did I hear you say that it would be appropriate for us to all be in the room for that particular?
Well, I just think it would be better if possible for everybody to be in the room to continue to understand the implication of local water done well. Yeah.
If I could
Yep. go.
expand on that a little. So today's local water done well is more in the way of a briefing than a workshop. The workshop on the 11th is to actually tease out your questions about the various models and try and help us get to a point where we're heading towards a decision, because we need to get to a decision where council can head out for consultation on its preferred model. We need to do that by the end of February.
That whole timeline is 3rd of September, October. So, you know, we need to start that process or continue on that process. So your choices, whether you're in the room or not, but I think sometimes it's easier to get the information with the delicacy maybe, or the intensity of the information. That's probably better if we can tease that out in the room, but you choose. We'll make a Zoom available if that counts. Okay, alrighty, let's move on, guys. I'm going to welcome Jason. Good to see you here for 2025, Jace. And we are looking at, this is an information paper, of course, and we're going to go through the financial report. Councillors can find that on page 102. And we'll just work through that page by page as we normally would do, and take sections as we need to. Thanks, Jason.
Madam Mayor, so the financial report there for the first half of the financial year. So page 105 is the start of the financial report.
Excuse me.
105 is a summary for the entire organisation. At this stage of the year, we're about $2.5 million ahead of what we were budgeting for, and that's largely in other income. We've got additional income that we've received over and above what we had budgeted for, and our capital expenditure for the period is just a shade under $1 million higher than what we had budgeted for the first 6 months. So just flicking through the individual activities of water supply on page 106. Overall, we're pretty much similar at the operating surplus. It's about on budget, but with obviously some variations in income and expenditure. Capital expenditure altogether, we're about $500,000 ahead of what we had budgeted for.
Yeah, that was a huge leap in the electricity costs, wasn't it?
Yeah, there's a combination there of a bit of seasonality, because we do use a lot more electricity in the summer period, and our budget hadn't been calendarised to that fact. And also that we've got significantly higher level of new kit that is electricity covered. So yeah, it's a bit of a process of getting that assessment right.
So we'll look at getting that assessment truer and more accurate next time goes on.
Yeah, and with higher level of just hadn't really the full extent of the operating costs hadn't been fully appreciated. We set the budgets.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Page 107 is just a sort of it's come to an end at some stage with the previous reforms, but there is still a little bit of a tail associated with that. But we've received additional funding, and we are using that additional funding to do the next stage of the reforms.
Oh.
Storage, income generally is on budget and the expenditure is on budget. We've got a little bit of additional costs relating to employment, but that's been offset by some of the operating costs, particularly compliance, testing and sludge management are under budget for the first 6 months. And 109 is stormwater. A couple of variances there where we haven't spent for the first 6 months. Roads and footpaths on page 110, broken down into roading on page 111, and you can see there generally operating revenue is bang on budget. And our operating expenditure is just a little bit lower than what we predicted for the first 6 months, and our capital expenditure there, just some timing variances with regards to Seal Road pavement rehabilitation and Seal Road. Spent recently over the next few months. Roadside construction, similarly, we've got underspend in the general maintenance, and we do have significant amount of renewals budget. That is all time for the second half of the financial year. Coastal hazards on page 113. Yeah, because we there's a significant amount of interest planned as we perform that was deferred, was supposed to happen in the first part of the financial year, and as a result, it hasn't incurred the level of debt that was predicted, and so the interest cost assigned to the Amberley Beach Foreshore protection hasn't been incurred.
It hasn't really started. I guess that probably some costings come through that for that fund. Do we know if the work started?
Yeah, my understanding it started Dan. So the Amberley Beach Fund, that's underway.
Yes.
Yes, okay, so we'll see some shift in that figure there over the next month or so. Yeah.
Probably won't come through the following report because
No.
it's only
Couple of weeks, yeah. Yeah, I guess I'm just noticing that we're likely to see that change from a council perspective.
Yeah.
And it'll be more than that budgeted cost anyway, because we've got is that the cost? of the plan
That was
originally?
the full cost.
Full cost, okay.
I believe we had budgeted in from the previous
Yeah,
year.
right, okay.
The issue is one timing as far as the interest cost is
Yeah.
concerned, because installment funds at the moment also to a debt situation in the
Yeah. Okay, go ahead and move on. Thank you.
Okay, page 114 is public services as a group. You see there with most of the additional other income sits under public services. So as we move down into the individual activities, community services on page 115, you can see we've got additional funding there of 374,000, and then just the listing there that Brad and Rhea have provided, just on the timing of the various programs that we have in place and the funding associated with that. Page 114.
Well, remember councillors, I talked to you about a member of our community offering to support our young people in our district, and we've been working, I've been working with the team and individuals, and $1 million has been supported for our community for a program to run, I think, 3 times over the next 12 months for young people. So will that it's going to be paid in 3 tranches, Hamish.
Yep,
Will we see this coming through here as
Yeah.
well as a separate line item?
Yeah, we can make sure it's a separate line item.
Yeah. I think it'd be good.
Generally, we've put in this because there are conditions based on
Yeah,
the funding and, you know, because there is always a potential, if we don't spend the money or don't complete the project, that funding has to be returned.
yes,
And that's largely the determining factor, but we can say it's financial.
in many ways, this will be the same as well. I mean, it has the gift is for, did I say million dollars? 100,000, sorry. Yeah. Sorry, just seeing if you're all awake, okay? 100,000, sorry, just, my brain just. Sorry, $100,000, that's still a significant amount of money for a person in our community to give for our young people, so notwithstanding that was my mistake, but I think it would be good to have it allocated and shown, because there is some, there are some measures that we will be providing back to the individual as well as we progress that progress. But it's very exciting, so it's pretty cool. Yeah, anyway, thanks, Justin.
Page 116 is property, and the predominant variance here relates to the Soldiers Block, both in the income and also in the capital expenditure. The budget for this year for the Old Soldiers Block is 2.6 million. 2 million of that has been spent already, so a bit ahead of what we had allowed from the budget. Page 117 is reserves. Some minor variances there. Emergency services and there and some key system work that's planned for civil defence having been the library on page 119, the key variance there is just the level of development contribution we have set for the eventual expansion of the library in 9 years' time now, just behind on what we had budgeted for. As most of the after a couple of years of significant DCs being received. Waste minimisation, page 120. Transfer station charges are significantly ahead of what we had budgeted for. Refuse collection bag sales is pretty much on budget. Got in contributions that we're receiving to do some expansion work, some behind what we had budgeted for. Page 121 is group activity for regulatory services, and then that's broken down into 1 to 2. And key variance there is that we incurred less employment costs and less external consultants. 123 is compliance and other regulatory functions. The key variance there is that building control income is up on budget for the period, but we do have some additional expenditure, which part of that increase in the building control income is then contractors to process those consents.
And that new software or the license fees, do we not anticipate Is that an additional expense?
Driven by volume dependent those fees, so
Okay.
we charge per consent, so we do consents. Fees.
Right, okay, but it ended up being a neutral, or is that cost that we impose?
No,
Or we bear?
No, we collect more revenue for doing more consents, but we pay more license fees, so it eats up a component of that money.
Can we manage that any different?
Well, when we move to the new IT system, we'll no longer use that system,
Okay.
that IT system, because the fees have increased significantly over time on
Right.
the system, so
Okay.
be a significant saving.
Okay. Look forward to that. Cool, thank you. Thanks for that.
Okay, page 124 is thermal pools. And for the first 6 months, the surplus that's been derived is 570,000. Our budget for the first 6 months was 1 million, so around $550,000 lower than what we had budgeted for. The key period will be January, so we'll get a better handle on what January looks like very soon.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Given, I guess, the seriousness of the numbers for December, if I can ask, and I guess Hamish will be the only one who will know, does the pools run some form of daily operating control in terms of tracking the performance day by day in terms of revenue throughput? My question is getting to is, how is January tracking? Is January likely to come in on budget based on the data we have from a management viewpoint, or are we expecting it to fall short?
I think the indications are that January's been patchy with the weather that we've had. Key period at the start of January, we were down at around 3% in numbers, but trading subsequently has been patchy. So, yeah, I can't give you the exact details, but
Yeah, it looks not hopeful. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. That's all I can ask.
Cool, thank you, Gary. Another question, I've got one coming from Tom and then Vanessa, thank you.
Through the chair, Hamish, when I look at December 22 and December 23, we seem to be tracking progressively worse for December months. Is there any reason why? That can anyone put their finger on it? Is it a
yeah,
little-
there's two major drivers. Number one, the economy. People don't have the money to spend as much as they did previously. And number two, the weather. So the long-term visitors to Hanmer all turned up, but the day trippers who make their decisions based on weather were less prevalent there. So you know, if you get a good settled summer period, they'll basically plan ahead to turn up and turn up for the day. But when the weather's unsettled, they're less likely to make the trip.
Fair enough.
Good, Vanessa, thank you, Tom.
Yeah, excuse me, Jason, sorry to trouble you. Under the operating expenditure of the pools, you've got employment costs. And the actual costs were 12,440. The budget was 2,707. That seems quite a big variation on a fairly simple amount that, you know, surely operating costs and staff costs would be fairly constant. It seems to be a big variation.
I will check with that one. I didn't pick it up on my first sweep of the numbers. This employment cost is council employment costs relating to servicing the polls. It's not the polls. The polls wage costs are included as part of the surplus. So I will check on that. I'd imagine that is just allocation of particularly my team's time involved with assisting the doing some key things, but I will dig deeper into it.
But I guess your question was also, is the budget number correct? And, you know, because it seems like.
Yeah, it just seems that
Yeah, incongruent.
costs would have been fairly, I would have thought fairly stable, and
Yeah.
there's quite a big variance there in those two figures.
Okay,
But
so
that's
Jason will
fine,
come
that's
back.
fine, thanks,
You
Jason.
just
yeah.
come back by email. to that one. Yeah, question, Dave?
So in hand with a proposal that's looking at any other projects or anything, none of those costs have been coming through into the employment costs. if you boil it costs a hot, if I've got the eye off the ball doing other things, do those costs come onto the pool? Is there extra, what I'm saying is there extra costs if there was other projects they were doing? Is that all into the day-to-day running of the costs? If the CFO is doing a lot of work on another projects and getting consultants, does that end up in there, or does that would end up in the capital costs?
And would generally, what we do try and do, if there is any staff members, council staff members, I can't state categorically whether that's the case for the staff at the pools, but any of our staff, if they allocate time to a capital project, the wage cost is added to that capital project. And that's particularly the case with our water assets, because significant amount of laying pipe is the labour cost input into it, which is we need to build into our unit cost rates, because that's ultimately how much that will cost to replace if we were contracting that work out.
So I suppose what I'm saying is like the Queen Mary site, extra work that's happening out there, it's not rolling over into. I thought it was, but I'm just asking the question.
Yeah, and I could clarify that it's in the silo. Yeah. Oh, no, question, Robbie?
Here's me, Robbie Hamish about it. Answer. Outwardly with the pools, I've seen from those more billboards and advertising and things like that. I know there's a balance between spending more to try and earn more, but it looks to me like they're pushing every button they can to at the moment. I've seen big billboards and things which I hadn't noticed before. Trailer house ones I didn't think, which is good.
So we ran a campaign pre-Christmas to make sure that we were in people's minds over that Christmas break. It's always hard to measure the return on investment with those things, but we did push it significantly. So it was a campaign.
Question.
If the scenario carries on like it is at the moment, it's going to have a big effect on our whole finances of our council. Have we got a plan B? What do we do if we get to March and we're still way behind? How do we budget? How do we balance?
Yeah, I mean, I think
Let's hope
we're all consciously aware of the situation, and I'm guessing that'll come to the pools committee and then we'll go through into our budgets for the following year as well. But certainly it should be in the minds of all sitting around the pools board, and it has been for a period of time, and it absolutely it will flow through on how we manage our budgets going.
All I'm looking at is, if you can't deliver on the dividend, how it affects the rest of the council.
I mean, I think we understand. I think we understand the issue you're raising.
We certainly have had varying results over, particularly over COVID, both ways, because we didn't have lockdowns. The pools actually made a record surplus, but the following year, when there were significant restrictions, it close to bottom now.
We've got one more question from Vanessa.
Through the chair, it would be there is a strategy at play. The board and staff management at pools are working on how to attack the issues. It would be quite nice if we were, as council, given maybe a bit of a flavour or a taste of what that is, just to give us some reassurance that there is an action plan in place.
When do we have another presentation from Graham or somebody that will give that accuracy in the foreseeable future?
I can't remember when Graham's next due to report, but there are members of that committee sitting around the table who can speak with knowledge about that topic.
Sorry.
Can I go to you? Okay, I'll go to you and then I'll come to you.
I was just going to say, I guess in response to Hamish' comment, that the critical next meeting will be the management
Yeah.
committee meeting, whenever that is, sometime later this month, isn't it?
Yeah.
Lady Amelia, it's not until the beginning of March, it was going to be February, but it's been.
Okay,
Sixth-
well, whenever
sixth of
that
March.
is, then that's
Yeah,
the
sixth of
critical meeting that needs to be
Yeah.
reported in some detail back
That's
to
right.
the council,
Yeah.
in my view.
Yeah, look, I'm comfortable with that. Vince, you sit around there as well. And so, yeah, I think, Tom, sorry.
Yes, that's okay. I think that the pools committee realised that the projected figures were probably more optimistic than they should have been, given the current economic climate. And the figures were suggesting substantial growth in numbers rather than a decline in numbers. And I think that's what is skewing the figures. And just to confirm that there are steps in place to address the imbalance. Yes, so, you know,
Well, I think that certainly that the Port Board have acknowledged the situation
yes.
and requested that savings are and will and should be made where they're possible to try and, you know, bring that budget and or that variation in alignment. And I think that's something that has been discussed at length and managed at the pools board. So yeah, but I don't disagree that, you know, we all should be made, be fully briefed and aware of that, so thank you. Did you want? Yeah.
I acknowledge that right around the country, a lot of our tourism businesses right around the place are struggling. But from the point of view on this side of the table and away from the pools committee, obviously we plan our long-term budget and our funding for a number of things. So I'm sure that they're working hard to cut their costs and come in, but we also have to acknowledge that that's going to put some challenging things on council and the work that we want to do. And so I think it's vitally important that we're as accurate as we can be, because that's going to affect our rates and around the table as a whole. We have to have our focus on that, and we need to ensure that we get that clarity from the pools committee and then make our plans for the rest of it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of the statements that have been made, so I think there is a message there and we need to act on that message and that was really.
So I just note that the pool's revenue in the first half of the year is about a quarter of the total, the pool surplus in the first half of the year is about a quarter of the budgeted surplus. So we were budgeting a surplus of $4 million, a significant surplus. So I don't think we're in a danger zone where the pools won't be able to pay the $1 million dividend or anything like that. I think that the important thing is that that you know that three quarters of the surplus is yet to come, and it's how that rolls out that we need to keep our eye on.
Yeah, and I think those questions have been raised around the pools board and they need to follow through for everybody's understanding around this committee. Are you happy to move on? Yep, thank you, Jason.
Okay, page 125 is the group activities for governance and corporate, and then that's broken down into governance. And the key variance of note there is a cost of around $8,000 for the Hammers Springs Community Board by-election. Still wasn't budgeted for. Page 127. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Jason, I'm back on 125, and I'm just looking at the operating expenditure and the employment costs for December, and albeit that they're in the right direction, again, that still seems like a fairly significant difference in comparison to the budget. Is that a calendarisation?
There's a bit of it will relate to holidays. because we do accrue holidays every month right up, and then a whole lot of it's taken in, it was almost 2 weeks of holidays in December, and we'll probably see the same in January, where we have accounted for the holidays in previous months as it's accrued, and then when it's used, it reverses itself.
So that would be something that we would know that would happen every
Oh,
December, January.
generally,
So
yeah.
that's what I mean is, do we need to calendarise that a little bit more, or?
Yeah.
I mean, I can see that it's gonna balance, and in any way, it's in the right direction,
That's right.
so, yeah.
Yeah, we certainly can be a bit more precise about the calendarisation. It's just how overall, the work involved is there benefit gained from doing
Yeah,
that.
right, when it's gonna balance anyway,
yeah.
thank you.
Okay, we'll move back to page 127.
127 is the treasury account, so at the stage of the financial year, we've got our rate penalties are 32,000 above what we had budgeted for, and our external interest we've received, because we've had some funds on hand. Every time we get a rate strike, we just put money into the call account, so that's about $100,000 more than what we budgeted for. And then our internal interest paid and received different to what we had budgeted for, but our external interest is about $100,000 more than what we had budgeted for the first 6 months. But that was on the basis that our average interest rate was at for the year was at an amount I can't remember, but for the first 6 months it's been higher, and I'll talk about that when we get into
Just a point, actually, just to raise a point. I noticed that we have got increased budget from debt penalties. It just feels, I've just got to say that it just feels wrong that we are profiting out of those who are least able to pay. It's just an observation more, and I hope that that surplus perhaps goes to help those in our society that are less fortunate than ourselves. I just don't like seeing us making money out of the least able to pay.
Always know that those are the rates that we use.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's a bit of a double-edged sword, so we don't, we don't.
Doesn't make any sense.
I guess we'll just leave it. Yeah, thank you.
Page 128, corporate accounts, and it's largely on budget. There's variances in income, and then the final page of the report is earthquake recovery, and generally overall we're above what we've budgeted for, mainly due to additional rate money when we set the rates, set the budget. And when we actually set the rates, it's just different number of ratepayers that we're collecting the $62. So that's going the right way. Hopefully getting the long-term plan. We did have that debt that was occurred from the earthquake being repaid in about year 5 or 6. So additional rate money just gets rid of it quicker. And the second part of the financial report is the capital expenditure report, and that this lists all the key individual programs that we budgeted. So the very last page, you can see that our total capital expenditure for the year has been with 43 million, and we've spent just under 10 million for the first 6 months of the year. Okay, we'll go to the rate arrears report. the amount owing at the end of December, 1,129, and the same point at the end of December 23, it was 1.37, so but 18% decrease. So it is certainly going the right way, and again, that's largely been due to be able to have capacity within the team to actually deal with this. We only had one rates person for a significant period of time. We've got 1.6, and that 6 is dealing largely with debt collection.
So through the interesting thing there is that there's only an 18% increase, 18% lower year over year, same period. But the rates themselves had a substantial increase. So there's an interesting dynamic there somehow. Obviously, the system following up is working rather well.
We still do have a number of rate payments here that are have got significant amounts owing that we are dealing with separately. And ultimately we do, when we have the ultimate sanction, or generally being able to, when properties are sold, that we get the rates paid at that point, which could be a bit of a slow burn until we get there, Okay, the last bit is the Treasury account, Treasury dashboard. So at the end of December, during December, about $6 million worth of debt. So that brings the balance up to 77 million. Our liquidity ratio at the end of December was 115%. And the key thing for me is the weighted average cost of funds for council, and that dropped from 4.63 down to 4.54 by the end of December. Just a couple of points to note further through, and again relates to the market rates. The 90-day bank rate was 4.17 at the end of December. Just today, the 90-day bank rate is 3.98. So that's the first time it's ducked under 4% since October 2022. So it's been a long time coming. So and that will have an effect on our cost of funds, because we do have a portion of our funds that are still dominated by floating rates. And so the dashboard is just provided there. The listing of the debts, listing of our interest rate swaps, the graph showing the comparison between council's cost of funds and the OCR and the 90-day bankroll rate. The last item on page 104 is just at the end of the quarter we reset our interim interest rate. So as the weighted average cost of council's funds at 4.54, the interest charge on any communities or activities that hold debt will be 5.54%, and for the thermal courts will be 6.54%. And then the 3-month term deposit rate advertised by Westpac was 4.3%. 4.2% from September, so that is any activities that hold funds credited interest. Then page 141, it's just their internal debt. I do slip immediately to page 143, where the debt for thermal pools is at 16.2 million. Our overall debt relating to water is just a shade of 46 million. For sewer it was 11 million, and for stormwater it was 3.5.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you. We've gone through papers as we would normally do, so that one of the questions from councillors in regard to the report, looking for the recommendation on page 104, that we received that information. Vanessa?
Through the chair, a quick question. Jason, on page 144, looking for social housing and rate reserve funds, bottom. Operating expenditure December 2024, 180,000. Where are we at with, I know I keep raising this and forgive me for having forgotten, but where are we at with discussion around our social housing and
Yeah, so we're planning a workshop, several date yet, but we're looking to discuss social housing and options
Thank you.
for social housing.
Fiona, someone ready, second, thank you, Tom. All in agreement that we receive that information, please say aye. Okay, so, thank you, Jason. Thank you. So I'm just wondering, it's 10:24, and rather than move into the reserve management plan, maybe we break for morning tea. Sorry, Andrew, you were just waiting and, you know. But I just wonder whether that would be a better use of our time to have a break for morning tea now and be back in the room ready to start at 10:40, please, because we still do need to get through all of these decision items, hopefully before we break for lunch. So, you know, we'll need to work diligently through these next few papers, but I think it makes better use of our time and our officers' time. So thank you. We will adjourn for 10 minutes for morning tea, making assumptions or something there, and we'll be back at 10:40. Thank you.
dry overseas. It's actually
Rightio, councillors, we're ready to go, and we welcome Andrew and Judith to the table. Andrew, you're going to take us through the reserve management plan, is my understanding, and the associated attachment that councillors will have in front of them, and will read the regional input as well. And so perhaps if I do note that the significance, and I support the significance of this paper and that criteria as well. So perhaps, Andrew, if I ask you to walk us through the paper and then provide us some guidance of actually maybe how we're going to tackle this I was going to say beast, but you know, it's way more important than that. But we're in your hands, Andrew, and we look forward to it. Thank you.
Madam Mayor. Yeah, good morning and welcome back for the new year. So the report is it's a combination of over 2 years of work, which started in January 2023. It was adopted for consultation by Council in March 2024, and what followed was a 2-month consultation period commencing in March, 27th of March, and closing on the 23rd of May. I'll just go to page 16 of the agenda and sort of briefly go through a little bit of the timeline, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. But in from January 2023, there was a number of reserve site visits to all the reserves throughout the various wards. And reports went to community boards and committees seeking feedback on the various reserve policies, and that was in January, February of 2023 as well. It was a council workshop in October of 2023. An update provided on the process so far and next steps, and public notification notice of intent to review the reserves management plan was issued in October of 2023. Also in October to November 2023, feedback on the 36 general policies of the reserve management plan was sought. There was a second council workshop in March 2024, which provided an update on the plan provided prior to the council adopting the draft reserves management plan for public consultation. And in March 2024, on the 12th of March, council adopted the statement of proposal and the engagement and communications plan. As I said earlier, in March 2024, 26th of March, council adopted the draft for public consultation, and the public consultation ran from 27 March to 23 May, which was required as part of the special consultative procedure. A total of 186 submissions were received, and the council heard approximately 18 submitters speak to their submissions, and that was in June. The council deliberated on the matters raised and made changes in response to those submissions. Those changes have been incorporated into the final document before you, and summarised in the report before you now. I wasn't intending to go line by line, no. But I'm happy to take questions, and I will do my best to answer them, and ably supported by my assistants.
That's good. I think they're good news. Shuffled over a seat. Yeah. Okay, look.
So, yeah. Additional errors have been identified subsequent to the agenda being circulated. One or two by staff, and a couple of more are coming through. And I anticipate some more as a result of these discussions. So, yeah, we'll work our way through those changes. I guess we need to be careful with the changes that we do look to make, that if they're of a substantive nature, it's going to change how we deal with adopting the reserves management plan. Minor changes relatively okay, but if we're starting to look at changes to policies and things of those natures, then that, you know, we need to revisit how we're going to progress it.
Totally understand what you're saying, Andrew, that we need to make certain that the context or the content doesn't change, because that triggers another process release.
That's
So,
right, yeah.
you know, we need to be, we need to understand what we're requesting. So,
And I'll be guided by Judith, but my view would be if it's of a policy nature, that then changes the nature, but if it's sort of similar to the narrative and some of the changes that have been identified are generally of a narrative type nature in the plan, then, you know, that's not changing how we're intending to manage these reserves. So we're looking to adopt the management plan, and then subsequent to that, under delegated authority from the Minister of Conservation, which was granted in 2013, we're looking to approve the management plan. So, and then that will conclude hopefully the process. So earlier this morning, some errors were identified and circulated. And I've opened it up to the floor for discussion, I suppose.
yeah, look, that's great. I think, you know, as a council, we've been well immersed, I guess, in this process, both with our community and for our community. And so perhaps I agree with your statement, Andrew. We not looking to go line by line, because that would be an onerous task. It would not achieve a successful outcome. So I guess to keep it at the level that we expect, and taking into consideration the points that Andrew has noted, I just want to give councillors, I mean, you will all have looked at your own reserve in your own districts. Is there anything over and above what we've got on this paper in front of us that have been noted that need to be changed from a narrative perspective? So if I start with you, if I'm just going to work around, Karen, have you got anything that you would like to share with Andrew, just to, you know, looking at your reserves?
Thanks for that, Madam Mayor. Yes, I just had a brief chat with Andrew in the break, and there are a few minor things that I've identified that I have recommended that we just tweak some wording to make it more accurate. I've emailed that proposed or suggested changes to him, and my thought was, rather than going through them laboriously here, I could have a conversation with Andrew separately to just.
And you're happy with that, Andrew?
Confirm anything.
Okay, I think we can just quite sort of slickly, in a slick manner, go through this process. But that's great. Thank you, Karen, for that. Dave, looking at any reserves that you're familiar with, is there anything in the narrative that you are seeking to alter or change?
No, I read through it and I'm not sweat the small stuff. No.
You're happy with what's written? Thank you. Vanessa, looking at South Ward from your perspective.
I've got quite a bit to say, actually, Madam Mayor. Would you like to leave me till last?
Yeah, okay, I'll come back to you. Fiona, have you got anything you'd like as far as the reserves that you're kind of more familiar with?
I think most of the adjustments there have been made, and I appreciate the process that went through that allowed us to keep working at it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Pauline, anything that you've noted from your...
Yeah, I do have a couple of questions and maybe clarifications, if that's okay. Right on page 1 of the report, in the very first paragraph, the last sentence, I noticed that we've got the current exceptions to the reserves management approach, being the Hammer Springs Thermal Reserve and the Queen Mary Historic Reserve. So they are exceptions to this plan because they have their own separate management plans, and which I completely understand. So I just wondered then, I noticed that on page 13 we include a beautiful photograph of one of those, the Queen Mary Hospital Historic Reserve, and I just wonder if that that could cause confusion, given that that reserve is not part of this plan.
So if you have in the Westport section.
Yes,
that
oh,
talks
sorry,
about
so-
page 13, but each east, west, and they've all got separate
this is-
numbers.
Sorry, no, it's on page 13 in the general part at the beginning, the aims, objectives and policies. So we have this gorgeous photo.
Oh, yeah.
But that reserve is actually, in my understanding, excluded from this document because of its separate management plan.
So I guess the question you're saying is, could there be another photograph placed?
Yeah, I mean, I love that photo, but it just
Yeah.
might confuse anyone reading it.
So we'll just leave that with you, your discretion, I think it's a mop-up,
Yeah,
so,
sure.
okay, anything else?
Yeah, one other thing, which is just a clarity question, and I'm trying to recall as well, but I noted that in the officer's report, and I'm sure I do recall this on page 20 of our agenda, that when we removed some local purpose reserves, in the Southwood, we removed the, when I get to that, I'm mixing up the Oak Tree Reserve with the Olive Grove Reserve. Don't worry.
Right, we can move on. Thanks, Pauline, that's awesome, happy with that. Tom, anything from the reserve that you're familiar with?
A very robust process, and everything that we suggested in Westport and Springs is incorporated, so no,
On track,
great process.
perfect, thank you, Tom, I appreciate those comments. Ross, anything from your?
Look, same for me, but I just have a wee question just regarding the East Ward and page 27, just whether it's worth worrying about or not, but the Jed Cemetery, and I just wanted to check, because the Jed Cemetery is 1.2 hectares, and it's the same picture as on the Jed River Reserve, but is that worth worrying about, or is that the Cheviot, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, East
So
Ward,
we're
so
looking at East Ward on page
27.
Jed River Cemetery.
Jed River Cemetery, and it's the same picture as of the next page over, which is 2.5 hectares, and the cemetery is 1.2, but it's the same picture, and I just wondered, is there?
It's just close together, isn't it?
Yeah. Is it worth worrying about?
each other.
Okay,
It doesn't separate anything out, but I'm not worried about it, but I just thought.
okay, so we'll
Is
leave,
there
I think as a minor adjustment, if we leave that for officers to consider your input in that regard. And, yeah, so you've got that, Andrew?
Yep.
Yeah,
So we're talking about the map, just to clarify.
Just the map,
Yeah.
yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
Vince, there's a lot of
Just
reserves
a
in
couple
your
of
pack.
questions, the Buxton Camp and Playground Reserve, it's got about inundation, review policies about planting native trees, but doesn't say anything about doing
Can you give me-
erosion protection work.
Can you give us a page on that?
Page 22,
Thank you.
59. It's got to reduce the effects of seawater inundation, but we've got a bit of a plan on the go to put a whole rock wall in. That's not mentioned in it.
I think, is that page 1 in the East Ward?
Yeah,
No, it's
I'm just looking at the changes that's written in it.
Oh, in the report.
So Madam Mayor, I can answer that.
Thank
I
you.
guess the reason for that is that work is still underway, so we
In the
don't.
plan, it's, you know, the native trees are on, even that's work on the way, you know, so I was just wondering why it doesn't mention that, because it'll be, affect that reserve putting in the protection.
Madam Mayor, I'll just continue. The reason why it wasn't included is that that work hasn't got a resource consent and hasn't been approved by the committee. So we could have a general mention around that work is being explored. But there's no commitment to that project yet.
Well, we won't have a reserve if we don't, so it doesn't matter.
So perhaps to pick up on what Vince is raising, that there is some work pending, but there's still a process we need to go through. Is there a sentence that could be included, Judith, or Andrew, that doesn't shift the context and says there is some work being explored too in a projected policy adjustment?
And then on page 23 of our agenda, 71, the Haranui River Reserve, it says there's potential in reserve to use it to Waka armour storage, where it's interesting they're not actually using that area, they use St Anne's Lagoon. So why isn't it at St Anne's Lagoon as storage? Because that's where they keep their Waka. No, they haven't actually been using it in the Haranui River because it's not really suitable or time for using it. I'm just wondering why it's been put in, where's the background to it going in that reserve? Because it doesn't actually.
So, well,
It's the reserve up on top.
my memory, but this is a few months ago now, is that that was in response, in direct response to a submission requesting that, and that the council agreed to include provision for that.
Why is it not the St Anne's Lagoon? Why is that no?
I would make the assumption there wasn't a specific submission asking for that at St Anne's Lagoon, and that's why it wasn't included. But we can include that as well, yeah.
I'm just
People
looking at
making
the
changes at
practicality.
this late stage where it hasn't been subject to submission or comment. We can have a look at that one.
It's the first time I'd ever heard of it, was when I read it here, the changes. So I can't remember hearing it seen the submission. You know, when we did the submissions, I would have actually talked about it then if I'd seen it.
Okay.
Talked about it.
Right, so I think we need to be careful and cautious about something included or deleted that wasn't with the intent of the submission process, but is there relative comfort from councillors that we, Andrew and Judith probably picked up that messaging and do the best we can without actually exposing ourselves to a complete review of this whole process again for the sake of the end. So I'm just cautious to expect something to happen that is in direct conflict to actually. Andrew, we'll look it up. Yeah.
Okay, have a look at, because I'm just looking at the actuals.
Right.
And the Waka was kept at St Anne's Lagoon.
Right.
It's never been happening there.
Right.
Where did it come from?
So we'll leave that as an adjustment to officers for them without being cautious about not changing the intent of the whole reserve. So have you got anything else as far as?
Just on the Miller Street Reserve, 23 again, 75, it's got the helipad maintained to a high standard. What do you mean by a high standard? What's that mean?
What does that mean for Cheviot?
Yeah, well, what is the high standard?
Suitable for a helicopter. Needs to be maintained.
That's all.
Needs to be managed, yeah, yeah. So, yes, we would expect a facility like that to be kept at a standard that's functional and usable, because we don't want people to get caught. I don't know, that's just my top of the head suggestion. So.
I think suitable.
Yeah.
To, subject to whatever the
functionality of the helipad. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, kind of understand the context, I think, behind that, so thank you. So we'll see if that can be considered, I guess. Yeah. Robbie, South Ward, there's probably you've looked a little more interest, but across the whole document, is there anything you want to add or suggest?
No, I think after 2 years of hard work, I'm happy. There was one thing I raised around Chamberlain Park this morning, was around recognising the Chinese side, particularly the Ruby Alley and futures, but we were satisfied that it's loose enough in there that any future development around that can happen. So no, all good.
Good, thank you. Gary?
No comment from a detailed viewpoint, this is a brief comment I will make later on when we get to it.
Yeah. Okay. I'll come back. Is there something that's relevant to this discussion? Just looking at, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to give a reference for the officers in regards to the Waka query.
Page number.
Yeah, so back in the, I just went back to my notes, looks like page 439, and I apologize if I pronounced the name wrong. Heidi Tirakariri Nash. Oh, sorry, no, I don't think it is, I think it's Tirakariri, not, I might have that wrong. Oh, okay, I must have written it down wrong, but there was actually a request specifically. Okay.
That's great, thank you, that'll be really helpful for them.
Instead of, yeah.
Thank you. Vanessa, I'm going to come back to you.
Through the chair, I actually might save mine when I speak, I'll be speaking to my vote. So I'll save that.
So you've got nothing in the context of the document as written that you would like to suggest from the, I guess specifically from looking at the policies from the South Board, you're happy with everything the way it's written? Okay, I'm happy to move on, thank you. So councillors, or maybe I'll just before we look at the adoption, Andrew.
Madam Mayor, so you sent through a number of queries or issues, and I've responded to the best that I could based on and most of them I've accepted and suggested recommended changes. A couple of them though was in relation to Chamberlain Park Reserve. And I've asked our property team to clarify, which is waiting to hear. But it seems 1959 because it was in the 2012 and the current reserve management plan. And then Hamilton's Library. I've suggested some wording changes there. Again, I've asked the property team if they have any knowledge of a time capsule. And it's not on the property file. And I've asked some of the operations guys if they're aware of a time capsule. Reading it, it just seems that it's meant to be that it's in the new seat, the relocated seat.
Right. Yeah.
But that's again, it's an assumption on my part.
So I think these two corrections that as I went through. So the 1959 Chamberlain Park, I just thought it was the dates seemed a wee bit out, but obviously that's correct. So thank you for that. The other ones have been picked up on, but yeah, it was around the location of that time capsule. I just didn't seem to make it seemed if I was reading this in 3 years' time, I didn't know whether it was going to give me an understanding of where the capsule was. So that's why I just asked for some increased clarity around that would be helpful in this document. So, but the rest is here in the documentation. I'm happy. Thank you for picking that. And I'm happy to consider perhaps now we looking at the recommendation. Everybody's had an opportunity to consider and review. And one thing I wondered perhaps should be included in this recommendation that we formally receive with minor amendments, so that it gives officers an opportunity to further accept what councillors have offered today as far as those minor amendments. So I would look to
set you two changes, Madam Mayor.
Oh, can you?
So one should be that actually the reserve management plan should be 2025. So that's that time is scoped on us, so that should be updated, and also the addition that the council delegates to me the ability to make minor corrections and amendments that councillors have raised or mistakes that we pick up.
Yeah,
so it's a standard kind of thing that we usually give.
Yeah, I'm really happy with that. So with that in mind, councillors, we've all been through this process. It has been lengthy. It has been an important, this is a 1 in 10 year chance to actually consider this. And so we do have some recommendations, and I'm willing to receive or mover and seconder for that process, given the consideration of the addition of delegations to the Chief Strategy and Community Officer, and shifting the date from the reserve management plan to 2025. So if there is someone willing to move that, thank you, Tom. Do I have a seconder for that? Fiona, thank you. So I have a mover and a seconder for that. I'm looking, feels like I need to apply standing orders, and I will offer councillors to make their position. I'll take 3 that are willing to speak in support of this, and those to the contrary. So the floor is open now.
Through the chair, Understanding that we are actually receiving and adopting the reserves management plan as a whole, I am therefore forced to vote against it on the basis of one small-ish component of the plan being the cricket development at the Village Green. Firstly, I'd like to thank Judith and her team for this immense body of work. It's been ongoing for quite some time. Secondly, I have had correspondence from a constituent who has asked me to, just bear with me please, councillors, are you able to, on my behalf, this is in relation to the cricket development, inform the council that a letter has gone to the Ombudsman Office in regards to the Eastern Reserve, and that I want it recorded that they are aware that this was actioned prior to the vote being cast. Subsequent to that, I want to draw councillors' attention to our development contributions policy. I want to highlight just a number of clauses in that policy. Council considers.
Have you got a page that you want us to refer to?
No, I haven't, sorry. I quote, council considers that the best mechanisms for ensuring the cost of growth sits with those who have created the need and the benefit from the work, equal new residents. And I argue that that forms a substantial amount of the submitters we had who spoke against the cricket or for other facilities. The council makes clear in this policy when determining funding decisions the extent to which growth benefits from a project, as well as how much it benefits existing ratepayers, where and to the extent that work benefits existing residents, those costs are recovered through rates. And I argue on the 90 to 10% ratio on that basis. The council has determined that it is fair and equitable that development contributions fund those areas of development which are necessitated by growth, not driven by community desire. The council recognises that renewals or upgrades of its existing facilities will also benefit new residents, but considers that the demand for these are from the existing population and therefore should be funded by existing household unit equivalents. The acquisition and development of the Southwood reserves are to provide additional recreational facilities and sports grounds due to growth over the foreseeable future. I argue that the cricket development is an upgrade. It is an existing facility. The cricket are currently playing on their home ground and have had access to that home ground throughout the years that we've gone through this process. I therefore state that the 90-10% ratio cannot apply. How can council say that 90% of the reserve is growth related when the cricket is taking up at least 70% of the ground for a small number of existing residents at a cost that leaves no funds for any remaining facilities that are actually growth related? And those have been funded by those residents. So I'm voting strongly against the cricket.
Thank you. Any other councillors wish to speak against or in favour of this? Thank you.
As I referred earlier, I'd just like to make a brief comment. I recognise and appreciate and fully support the reserves management plan as developed with all the work that's gone into it, with the exception of the policy and the words written around the Amberley Village Green Reserve and the outcome that was now in that plan. I remain deeply troubled by that particular situation. My thinking and my views with regard to the Village Green Eastern Reserve remain exactly as they were at the discussion we as council had at the November council meeting held in Glenmark. Mari, you and I have talked at some length around my views with that whole subject. Because of those concerns which still trouble me deeply, accordingly, I will abstain from voting for the adoption. I'm not in favour. I'm not voting against it, given the majority, the absolute majority that I support, but I find myself in a situation that I must abstain.
Floor is open, councillors. You can use the application of standing rights if there's nothing for you to say. nothing more to say in that regard. We have a mover and a seconder for the reserve management plan for 2025. All in agreement with that, please raise your hand. Numbers, those against? And those abstaining. Thank you. That motion is passed. Thank you. Can I just say from your team perspective, we recognise the huge effort that has gone through to get us to this point. It is, in my opinion, an enduring document that will be sustaining for our community and a good guidance tool. So thanks very much, and if you could please convey that to the rest of the team as well. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Judith. Radio councillors, we have got further decision items, so can I ask you turn to page 28 in the agenda. And this is in regard to the cemetery bylaw. You'll be aware in reading of this that it has gone past the strategy and community committee. The lands committee will have looked at this and the recommendations. Wording, but welcome Aidan, welcome Steph, it's great to see you both, and thank you for the time and effort you've made at this point. And perhaps if we just work through the cemetery bylaw review and we'll see where we get to.
Yep.
Floor is yours. Thanks, Aidan.
So taking this report as read, the cemeteries bylaw is in its final stages of its 10-year review as required by the Local Government Act. The process of this review was to evaluate whether the bylaw remained relevant and fit for purpose. It is noted that the cemeteries bylaw was developed in 2008 before being reviewed in 2014 with a previous version dating back to the 1980s. The 2014 bylaw has been reviewed by 2 policy officers, the amenities and maintenance team leader, who are the relevant operational team, alongside the district sexton, the council's lawyers, and the strategy and community committee, to create this new amended bylaw, which contains a number of minor corrections, updates to terminology, and content amendments which have all been made to improve the clarity and functionality of the bylaw. A consultation period was completed over November with the general public and specific consultation undertaken with the district's runanga, although no submissions were received from any party. A summary of the current and future steps that have been undertaken has been provided in points 7 to 9. In terms of today, I'll be presenting a further minor amendment that has not been consulted on, but was previously a topic of conversation at the October Strategy and Community Committee meeting. And finally, I will be recommending to Council that the new amended bylaw in Appendix 1 is adopted and the previous 2014 bylaw is revoked. The adoption of this new amended bylaw aligns with the Council's strategic objectives 1, 3 and 5 as outlined in point 10. And in terms of the legal and policy implications, the assessments of the Local Government Act and the Bill of Rights Act is unchanged from the October Strategy Community Committee meeting and is repeated here for all your convenience. Moving on to points 21 to 23, these outline the proposed changes to the bylaw that have been consulted on. These have all been presented to the Strategy and Community Committee, so I'll cover them briefly here. There's some minor term changes, such as burial to interment. This was presented as interment covers both body burials and cremation burials. The addition of the term plot was also added, as this is an all-encompassing term for where remains of all remains are buried. Not mentioned here, but after the October meeting, tombstone was also amended to headstone, as this was talked about in that committee meeting. And a definition was also provided. In terms of the more significant changes, clause 6.5 was added after a review of the Greys District bylaw, which, as the current bylaw allows for predominantly Western burials, and the addition of 6.5 allows the authorised officer to use their discretion to potentially allow for cultural or religious burials that fall outside of these standard Western norms to where appropriate under his jurisdiction, or their jurisdiction. A partial deletion of clause 7.1 was suggested by the district sexton as well, due to the plots being left unfilled and untidy occasionally when families were burying cremated remains. And finally, clause 7.4 and 7.5 were added for health and safety purposes, with 7.5 requiring a funeral director to be present at full interments, as currently they were not required, and the sexton is being requested to be present for health and safety purposes. However, this is not their responsibility and the cost ends up falling on council. As previously mentioned, one further addition has been added after the October meeting, where there was discussion about clause 13.2 and who had authority to remove items from a grave. After discussion with the council's lawyers, a minor amendment has been added in blue on the appendix in 13.2, outlining that authority lies with the sexton or the placer of the item. Another option is to have this as an explanatory text just below that clause, if that's what's wished. Moving on, the options considered are to adopt the amended bylaw and revoke the 2014 bylaw, or retain the current bylaw and undertake minor corrections. It is my recommendation that the amended 2025 bylaw is implemented and the 2014 bylaw is revoked on March the 1st. This would allow officers to undertake the final administrative steps prior to the implementation, whilst also providing a rounded date for the next review. This also ensures the bylaw remains relevant and fit for purpose. And it's also recommended that that we authorise the Chief of Strategy Community Officer to make minor and non-consequential amendments during this final editing stage.
Well done. That was a good synopsis of the process. Thank you, Aidan. Very, very good. So well done. I'll just canvass the citizen, a couple of questions maybe. Ross.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Aidan, just a query on page 32, clause 7.4, and the grave. And I understand the reason for that, health and safety, and we do it on building sites, having the bench, but the practicality of that is you might end up with about a 2 metre wide grave plus the grave itself. So if you come up immediately, if it's 1.5, you have to go out and then up, and does that make it practical then to what they sit on there to lower the coffin in? Has that been worked through? I mean, what other, is this a clause that other councils have? Because I can just see that you'd have to have a big pad on top of that to cover that beached out area, which possibly would need machinery to bring in something that size to sit it on there. Generally, our cemeteries are in areas, excluding when you have it really wet, that the ground does hold up, but does this work in practice? That's sort of really what I'm doing.
Well, it was recommended by the council, the district sexton, so I'd imagine that they have some good idea about the idea of how much that would occur. I haven't looked into other councils on this particular clause to see if they've got it, but if the sexton's recommended it, I have it for the health and safety issues, but I'm happy to.
Well, I guess if the sexton's recommend it, then he's got a way of dealing with it, but yeah, I just want to check that it is workable.
So perhaps in that light, and it might end up being a minor adjustment, I guess, to the wording, if it in practicality it doesn't, or the sexton can actually provide better advice on how it works in practical terms. But what we're wanting, and I think that's what you're heading to, Ross, is that we don't have a further implication because we're requesting and widening unnecessarily. So if you can take that on both remarks maybe and consider that in the practical sense, Aidan, I think we can progress this. So yeah,
as Tom just said, there might not be enough room to bench out that wide. Other plots as well. So I mean,
that's right. Hang on, we'll just get some clarity. So
just on that one, I mean, the clause allows for benching or shoring being used, and obviously if there's not enough space, then shoring is used, and we have seen shoring used before in the district, particularly with conditions. So I think the benching option is just an option that is there. Sexton's recommended it. I think that probably he has a better knowledge of how it works than what we do, but both options are there.
Yeah, okay. Look, I mean, I think that, it's the wisdom of having a discussion, isn't it? So I think you'll take that on board. So I've got a couple of other questions. So Vince and then Pauline. Thank you.
Just trying to get my head around, you've got the cultural, the additional one, the cultural and religious considerations, and then the next 7.1 actually goes against that. So, what do you mean? At 1 minute you're saying this, and then the next minute, no. What's Where are we?
So through the chair, it's basically 7.1 can still be allowed, it's just falls back on that authorising officer to allow for that to happen, so they'll use their discretion to potentially allow such burials as 7.1 to occur, but it's at their discretion. The sexton recommended that because he was finding that grave sites were just being left in a state after these burials were happening, so 6.5 still allows these to happen, but it now falls to the authorising officer instead of 7.1, which initially you could just do it. So now it goes back to the sexton has to allow it, which means he'll basically look over it and make sure it's not going to be left as an untidy mess in our cemeteries.
So I just trying to get my head around, so that's some cremation, so in an ordinary burial, the family can fold the grave.
Through the chair, no.
That's actually really going against my tradition.
Yes. That's what
So I'm against it, because as an Irish Catholic, that's what you do it. You've got all my family, I don't marry, but for your family, have your family help fill in graves? Because I know it's a tradition with us, and here you're talking in clause about cultural, and here you're taking it away in another, and I just think that's terrible.
Yeah, that clause 7.1 allows for the family to partially fill the grave with the sexton's permission, and partially filling the grave could be filling it to within a pebble on the top. The
Why
point,
has the sexton got the power?
the issue has been that where people have been left to their own devices on these, a number of occasions it happened where the graves have not been filled sufficiently, and it's been left to the sexton to then go and do the remedial work. So if the sexton says, yes, I'm going to allow you to do it, then he takes on the liability for any remedial work.
But it's under the contract, the sexton, he's paid to fill the hole, and even if he doesn't, is it? So it's not an extra cost, really, is it? I don't, that argument doesn't stand up to me.
I think this came through because we have had some recent examples where we've had plots that have been used for a service, and you know, the process hasn't been completed to satisfaction of the sexton even. So I think it's probably finding a spot that actually allows the family to continue to do what's really appropriate for them, but it's a conversation that they have with the sexton to say, hey, look, we will do it to, we will honour our family member and do what we need to do. But it actually removes the opportunity for inappropriate. I think that's what we're trying to manage here. And so just see your hand go up, Dan, to help me out.
Yes, Madam Mayor. So one of the primary reasons for the sexton raising this in the first place was that we'd had families going with the best of intentions, but actually used the wrong plot. So under the guidance of the sexton, we'll make sure we'll get it right, and that they actually go into the right plot that they're expecting to. That was the primary issue that we'd experienced here, which is driving this one. So we're not talking about removing the ability for the family to do what you're suggesting. So they're still going to be involved, very much involved in that process. But it's just up to the sexton to make sure, like they would with a full burial, about making sure that the right plot's used.
So the intention is not to remove the rights of individual families to choose to do what they choose to do to honour their loved ones, to try and manage when those occasional exceptions do occur. So does that kind of clear it a little bit for you, Vince?
We don't know.
Okay, ponder the thought anyway, and we'll get some other questions.
I just see how it's sort of contradicting one with the other.
If I just, I'll try to clarify. So 6.5 still allows these burials to all occur.
Yeah.
It just, the sexton just has to be aware of it occurring, because the initial bit was in 7.1, the issue of 7.1 is he wasn't aware that it's occurring, and then he's finding plots and things.
Yeah.
So 6.5 is just making sure he's aware, and he, I imagine, would still allow such burials if it's for cultural religious purposes, which is what's the reason have gone in there, that's what the Grey District has used as well. And it seems to have been working through there because it was a relatively new amendment for theirs as well. And it's one pass, just we have to delete part 7.1 to make sure that 6.5 still work. If that makes sense.
Okay, seeking more clarity. I think I was going to go to Pauline, I think, and then I'll go to Fiona and then Vanessa, and then we'll see what happens after that. But questions of clarification would be helpful.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. I was just gonna point out page 37, there's a numbering issue around 7.4, 7.5, 7.6, but I'm sure you can pick that up. And I was actually back to the discussion that Ross raised in regards to 7.4 about the fetching better insured. I was just going to point out that it says any excavation that is greater than 1.5 deep and where a hazard exists. So it's not everything, it's and where. So that gave me confidence that the wording was appropriate.
Thanks, Pauline. Fiona.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think in my reading of this earlier, I believe I saw something with relation to the explanation for 7.4. In that there are a number of people these days who neither use a director nor a sextant, but just families. And so it's all, I think it's considered a health and safety thing for right person, right place. So I thought the same as Vince to start with. I'm like, for our family and Paul's family, it's been a tradition to infill it. And if that's still available, and I think that in Hurunui, we respect everyone's traditions where we can, and perhaps what we've put in is to be a bit more broad-minded about traditions that aren't necessarily as, but I wasn't aware that if the instance where somebody might end up in the wrong place could be very distressing for a lot of people. So if they've got a funeral director, then that person will do that job. If not, then we go through the sextant. And so that leaves me quite comfortable about this situation.
Good discussion, because it kind of clarifies the question that you've raised, that we're just getting further understanding of it. So Vanessa?
Through the chair, I think the bylaw that we actually have in front of us currently has actually managed to achieve that very fine balance of keeping a formal structure in place, but whilst also allowing personal family wishes. And on that basis, I would move that we accept the officer recommendation.
The numbers?
Yes, yeah.
Perfect, thank you. So is there no further questions of clarity? We've got a mover that we look at the recommendation as worded. You're happy to second that? Thank you. All in agreement to that, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Abstaining? That motion is carried. Thanks very much. Councillors, that's fantastic. Thanks, Aidan. You better start tabling those. I think we've got another job to do. Oh, sorry, Robbie.
So just through the chair, it's not part of this bylaw, but it's part of the same subject really. I wonder when you were doing all this work and everything, our plots that may or may not be running out of plots, or is that going to be something that might be triggered later on?
It's an operational matter.
Yeah, I understand, but I wonder, while you were doing this, talk to sections and all that, some of them might have come back in.
And to be fair, I mean, that type of discussion has been raised on annual plans or whatever, you know, when should we be looking at purchasing further provision for our community, and I guess that's sort of sits beyond you, Aidan.
Yeah, it's in the and the only one that we're currently looking at over the next 15 years, I think, is Balkhead.
Yeah. So thank you. That's great. Are we happy to move on? Councillors, take us to page 42, which is the livestock movement bylaw. This again is in front of the Community and Strategy and Community Committee. But Aidan, if you just want to do the same, take us through this, and we'll see where this sits.
So again, taking this report as read, the movement of livestock bylaw is in its final stages as well. Was 10-year review is required by the Local Government Act. The process of review was to evaluate the bylaw, making sure it remained relevant and fit for purpose. The movement of livestock bylaw was developed in 2008 as well, before we reviewed in 2014, with a previous version dating to the 1990s. The 2014 bylaw has been reviewed by 2 policy officers, the roading team, who are the relevant operational team, the council's lawyers and the strategy and community committee to create this amended bylaw, which contains a number of minor corrections, updates to terminology and content amendments, which have all been made to improve clarity and functionality of the bylaw. The consultation period was completed over November as well with the general public. One submission was received, seen in Appendix 2, but they did not wish to speak to their submission. A summary of the current and future steps that have been undertaken has been provided in point 7. In terms of today, I'll be recommending to council that the new amended bylaw in Appendix 1 is adopted and the previous 2014 bylaw is revoked. The adoption of this bylaw, the new amended bylaw, aligns with the council's strategic objectives 1, 3 and 5 as well. And in terms of the legal and policy implications, the assessment of the Local Government Act and Bill of Rights Act is still provided and unchanged from the October meeting. Moving forward, sections 19 and 20 outline the proposed changes to this bylaw that have been consulted on. These have been presented to the Strategy and Community Committee, and so I'll briefly cover them here. There are a number of minor changes related to typographical and grammatical errors and updates to terminology, in which there are 2 updates. The first is providing a definition to excessive excrement, which appears in the bylaw but was not defined. And the second was amending the definition of livestock to be more definitive than just the list of animals. There was also 2 recommended amendments to the contents of the bylaw. First is an amendment to clause 6.3, which the council's lawyers recommended as having a specific requirement as a better choice than just referring to a general power under the Local Government Act. And clause 10.1 is an addition which allows for alternative methods of safe passage, as the current wording of any of the following restricted potential structures such as fencing being used. I'm going to cover the discussion at the October Strategy Community meeting and Mr. Wilding's submission together, because they both had a fairly similar related, they were both fairly similar relating to a term and enforcement of excessive excrement. Mr. Wilding's submission raised concern about 6.3, clause 6.3, suggesting that enforcement would be subjective for farmers and people raised in towns having views that would likely differ on what excessive is, with the definition provided also being vague. This was a potential issue that was brought up by Councillor Hislop in the October meeting. I've discussed this potential issue with the roading for their feedback, and they have indicated that there's been no significant compliance issues in recent history, with the term being within the bylaw since at least 2008. I will also note that I've reviewed bylaws of other councils outlined in point 28, which have provided a definition of excessive excrement, or have at least used the term within their bylaw, with Waimate going a step further and seemingly allowing no excrement whatsoever. Removal of the definition would also still leave the authorising officer with the discretion to decide what is excessive, so the definition is just making this clearer to any reader of the bylaw. The submission does need to be considered by council, and I'm happy to have the clause and definition discussed further by council, and if there's a better solution that arises, I can amend that prior to potentially adopting the bylaw. And moving on, the options considered during this bylaw review were to adopt the amended bylaw and revoke the 2014 bylaw, or retain the current bylaw and only undertake minor corrections. It is my recommendation that the amended bylaw is implemented and the 2014 bylaw is revoked on March the 1st, as this again allows officers to undertake the final administrative steps. And I also recommend that the council authorises the Chief Strategy and Community Officer to make any minor or non-consequential editing and layout changes in that final stage.
Great. Thank you, Aidan. I'm pleased that you raised the issue that was well discussed at the community and strategy in regard to excessive excrement, and also to highlight the feedback that we received from Mr. Wilding, because you know they were very much a parallel discussion, really, you know, and I just want to acknowledge the one submitter taking the time to raise that issue to us for our consideration. So I think it's important that we know that in our minutes that it is given the full account. So I guess we're up for some discussion maybe, and I'm sure Aidan's willing to accept some of those questions to clarify or further clarify the situation of this bylaw review. So the floor is yours, councillors. Is there any questions to clarify the proposed new bylaw and wording around that, or are you happy to look at it in its entirety? I've just got a quick one to start with while I'm pondering. Can I just look at page 51 about Things like farm means an area of land, the two words, it's got include raising of livestock. Spelling, is it supposed to be grazing of livestock or raising of livestock? See the spelling there? Yeah. Quite pleased with me finding it.
I missed that.
Must have been a quiet moment where I was like, oh, I'm on to this one.
I imagine it is going to be grazing.
Yeah, I thought it probably was, but so that's my 10 cents worth, guys. Is there any other questions in regard to the wording as written? Dave, I know that, you had a lot to just, raise the issues that have been further reiterated. Are you happy with the definition or the explanation of the wording? Because, yeah, it's probably good to hear it from you in its entirety, or we could look at moving on and progressing this.
Like as all farmers, I'm never ever going to read the policy again, and I'm going to apply common sense. So,
yeah. So I guess
I'm probably about more finding out catching wrong. So again, I'm not going to sweep the small stuff. It's common sense I'm more interested in. So it was probably about authorised agent and having it back in the discussions was more important to me. So I'm happy to move it.
Yeah, thank you. You have a question, or are you happy to second?
Both. What wasn't a question, it was a comment. I think it was worthwhile updating. I think I've been around when we've done this before and we've had some issues where we haven't included fencing as barriers. So putting that in, it's a good update. Solid problem. So I'm going to second it.
A mover and a seconder, but Pauline, do you want to comment?
I was just going to second and say that, I was pleased to see that, well, not pleased to see, but appreciated the submission that, as you've already pointed out, was in parallel to our discussions. And I think that the solution in here in the definition on page 51 really, approaches that submission very well.
Just a comment on top of page 51, it says that it's determined by an authorised officer to be more reasonable. It starts, I see that a bit like the noise thing. It just becomes and I've seen quite a few arguments on the noise because there's not actually determined this is what, it's just up to the person to decide. And that's messy, and it's just to me it's messy, and I've seen it with the noise because there's only about 3 or 4 noises per person in New Zealand. So what is excessive?
Well, I guess to take Dave's point, we're expecting an authorised officer to use to be pragmatic and use common sense around this whole process. And
but we don't say that.
Yeah. So, you want to add anything to that, or are you happy?
Well, I'm just bringing it up because I've seen it with the noise things, and it gets very hard for you as a council because it's just a perception of a person. And,
but that's where the problem is. A neighbour might think that lives rurally that he's entitled to walk to his letterbox in his slippers and get no shit on his slippers. Now, is that sensible and common sense? Yeah. My reaction in real life is tell him to bugger off back to town. That's
I'm sure.
I'm just
Hang on, can I just let's bring some sense back to this discussion? Yeah. So the point you're raising is how does the authorising officer actually use their judgment on excessive or not, and it comes back to that definition that we've been discussing round and round. Yeah. So.
And I've just seen a lot of time and energy wasted by this council over that exactly with the noise. Because it's just perception. What is it? Where legally does it stand? And well,
yeah. Okay. Look, I think we've had a good discussion. We understand the intention is there. Have you got a final comment that you want to?
I do, through the chair. I just wanted to reiterate that was part of the discussion we had when we were initially reviewing this, and it's the subjectiveness of it, like the noise example, that requires the decisions to come down to one authorised officer to make because it is subjective.
Actually, okay. Before I put that, there is another little typo. Sorry, here, when we look at the objectives, C and D, I think all should be one sentence actually. Prevention of road being used as livestock over internal farm races. It shouldn't be separated C and D, it should all just be one sentence. Yeah. So with that minor amendment, we have a mover and a seconder. We've had useful discussion. We understand the intent of this bylaw. Thank you, Aidan, for picking that up. So happy to move on. All in agreement with that, please say aye.
Aye.
As against? That motion's carried. Thank you. Alrighty, thanks Aidan, thanks Steve, appreciate your time. And we welcome now Nicola, and she's going to take us through the Easter Sunday shop trading policy review. It's on page 59. Okay, yeah, get out of the room. Is anybody going to come sit beside me? I just left to my own devices.
Bloody no, Chris.
So just noted that, yeah, thank you. Rightio, guys. We'll break into some interest. Rightio, welcome Nicola, thank you. This is a Easter Sunday shop trading policy review. There is some urgency for us to get on and do this job. There has been some, we've been through this process before with our community, and you can just take us through the paper, and I'm sure that we will give you the direction that's appropriate in this case. So thanks, Nicola. It's nice to see you.
So I'll take the report as read, and I'll just provide an overview of the contents. So in 2016, an amendment was made to the Shop Trading Hours Act 1990, which provide the ability for territorial authorities to have an Easter Sunday shop trading policy. It really rolls off the tongue, permitting shops to open on Easter Sunday, covering the whole or any parts of its district. So in 2018, this council went through the process to adopt our district's first Easter Sunday shop trading policy for the district. This went through the local government special consultative procedure and generated 25 submissions covering a range of opinions for and against. Ultimately, the council made the decision to adopt a policy. The Act directs for the policy to be reviewed every 5 years. This meant that the policy was due for review in March 2023. However, the Shop Trading Hours Act directs that if the policy is not reviewed within 2 years of that date, the policy is revoked. So this means this policy needs to be reviewed prior to 28th of March this year. Officers have reviewed the current policy, and we note that the policy applies to the whole of the Hurunui district and allows shops to choose whether to trade on Easter Sunday. Officers consider the policy remains fit for purpose and that the policy should be continued without amendment. It will be noted, however, there is a wee minor correction identified which corrects in reference to an act within the policy. The Act requires the use of the Local Government Act Special Consultative Procedure when reviewing this policy, even where it is decided to continue without amendment. Officers will ensure the requirements of the Local Government Act Special Consultative Procedure are adhered to through the consultation process. Is the requirement to prepare a statement of proposal, and this is attached as Appendix 2 to the report. Consultation will be advertised through the standard methods, running for a 1 month period, and a hearing will be held if any submitters express they wish to be heard in relation to their submission by the council. As such, today, the officer recommendations are that the council agrees to continue the policy without amendment and consult on the Easter Sunday shop trading policy using a special consultative procedure, and that the council adopts the statement of proposal prepared in accordance with Section 83 of the Local Government Act 2002. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Nicola. Well documented, and yeah, thank you. I just check in to see, I think it seems really easy from my perspective, but a question or a willingness to do something different?
Probably both. But I'm just clarifying, so we're just saying we're sticking with the one we've got, but we're going out for consultation with it, so people have an opportunity.
Yeah.
In that case, I move on.
Through the mayor, it is a requirement under the Act, even if you're not making changes, to go through the public process.
Happy to move that we do that out for consultation.
Second? Yep. So we do have a mover and a seconder. We understand that this is part of our requirement under the Act. Just before I put the motion, just for clarity, should we get submissions or feedback, do we need to determine here in this recommendation where they will come back to council for to hear those submissions? So it'll be at the March meeting maybe, or it might be an extraordinary meeting or something. So I was just trying to work in my mind how we would hear if we did receive some submissions.
All things going well, it would be at the March council meeting.
Yeah.
It will depend on, the
Volume.
volume and number. Last, when the council previously made this policy, nobody wished to be heard, but that's no guarantee that.
Correct, yeah, so we just need to go through the process with clarity of mind that should we hear back from anybody, and we need to do the hearing process. It will be at the March meeting, or Nicola will have a discussion with us if we need to do something different, just so that we're aware. Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder. If there's no further questions around that, I'll put that motion. All in agreement, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, that motion is carried. Thanks, Nicola.
Thank you.
Awesome, well done. Excellent.
Shall we get Hamish back in?
Yeah, this is Dan's paper anyway. Dan, do you want to take us through the granting of the easement at, on Chisholm? The work around this, so you can guide us. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Relatively straightforward report. You've got these boards before. This is where you have the duties of the minister, acting as a council in this regard, because the decision about issuing an easement over a reserve is delegated to Hamish, and Hamish will make that decision. So your decision here on behalf of the minister is to ensure that the process has been followed. So on page, I'm sure you've already seen on page 90, the tiny piece of land that we're talking about, 9 square metres. And to access private property, private developers said, can you please issue me with an easement across your reserve? So Hamish has done that already, and what you're here to do is to test the process. And on page 71.22, A, B, C, and D, they're the requirements that we must meet as we go through that process. And what we're here to say is this report suggests that those steps have all been followed. So the recommendation is that I'm acting on behalf of the minister, that you grant an easement of 9 square metres for Chisholm Park.
Robbie.
I'm just looking at the no unforeseen problems. Does this have any rating implications on rating at all? No, that's good.
Just while people are thinking, maybe, I think it's a really good acquisitions that's put into this paper, where we advertise this, because quite often we get to a table here and think, oh, I didn't see it in the local rag, or I didn't see, so I'm not sure who actioned this, but I actually think it's quite a good part of our process about knowing how it's, in this, Tom, it's your community, but actually it was in the Pinky on the 11th of October. So, we've actually actively put it, as best we can in front of our community to consider. So I just think that's quite useful, maybe for other papers as well. Are you satisfied that we have acted in the manner that we need to act in regard to signing this off on behalf of the minister? Would someone like to move that?
Make a very quick point.
Yeah.
I don't know how many units is on this development. I think it's about 8. Granting an easement over this tiny piece of land could be make or break to that development, and therefore could generate substantial profits for the developer at our cost. I wonder if we had thought about whether it had an economic value, because to prevent access to 8 units could be quite substantial. And it just thought that perhaps that easement has more value than we actually gave it credit.
Just want to leave that as a think piece, or looking for a response.
I wasn't, I was a think piece mainly, but Hamish does look So we talk about roughly 9 square meters of land for which the developer's paying us $5,000. So we're looking at rough terms, $500 per square meter. There's 10,000 square meters in a hectare. So it's $5 million a hectare. Is it, you're suggesting that we should have potentially done higher than that? In those terms, that's.
So I guess that
That
satisfies
sounds like
your
a good
curiosity.
economic deal.
Yeah, okay, I think we'll move on from that think piece. Thank you, Tom, though. Yeah, good response, thank you.
Just for clarification on that.
Yeah.
On page 83, which shows the actual layout, the little triangle eases the access, so it doesn't change. The developer's still got access onto that development without the 9 square meters. Really, I mean, when I look at the diagram, I know where Tom's coming from, but I don't think it's critical to the success of the development.
No, what happened was that the developers didn't realise that that 9 square meters wasn't included in their title when they drew up their plans. And so rather than change all their plans, change their access way, etc., they sought the easement. Now the land is not actually used as part of the reserve because it's bordered right on the creek and the walking and so forth happens on the other side of the creek. So there's no detriment to the community as far as that goes.
Good question, though, because it actually tests whether, you know, the process that we are signing off on the minister is actually in compliance. And I think the response is been accurate and appropriate, so thanks for that. So with that, looking to move in a second with the officers or the recommendation as written on page 69. Anybody willing? Thank you, Tom. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Ross. Right. There's no further questions around that. I'll put that motion all in agreement to that. Please say aye. Aye. Okay. That motion's carried. Thank you. Thanks for the questions coming forward. Thank you. So that will take us now to page 92, which is item 5.6. Dan, this is your paper, a motion on Karen's patch, which should be all over as well. So maybe you just want to take us through this relatively easy process, perhaps, but let's test it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So it hasn't been a relatively easy process in trying to work out this information. It's been relatively complex, which is quite interesting all in itself. So within the United Club Rooms, there is a historic view that the current kitchen is owned by council. And the current building, which was probably started in the 50s and has grown into what it is today, has gone through several iterations. So through the process that the Hurunui Community Committee have been going through, engaging about halls and the like, this has all sort of been uncovered. And now there has been a request through from the rugby club through to the Hurunui Community Committee that the ownership of the kitchen is gifted to the rugby club. And that all in itself would appear straightforward, but no, when you go back through, you try and find out how on earth a small piece of that building would have been under council's ownership was all quite intriguing. So super sleuth hats went on, searching through as much history as we can, and you can see some really well jotted minutes in the back of the report. But so we can't actually find any direct evidence that council owns that. We've gone and had a chat. In fact, Winton's done a lot of the super sleuthing work himself. He's gone back through the old Park Domain board minutes, and he's found some suggestion that it might be. So based on his view, what we managed to find on the balance of probability, we'd like to say that council does own it. But at this point, we're suggesting, as per the recommendation, that council declares no interest in that, thus handing it over to the rugby club. Interestingly enough, and I actually shared it with Mari, I found a Jubilee paper from 1971, and I'll just bring a little bit of lightheartedness to the meeting. But in that it was a really interesting article, and you can see that there's a little bit of a joke thing going on about they've got a guess who section in there, and it talks about somebody who was obviously a bit of a rascal in his day. And they put this section in the newsletter, and it's about the locals trying to guess who it was. So I'll just read it out. So they said that they knocked over the Reverend Cantor over in a friendly match at Harden in about 1921. Ran his car into the sea at Kaikoura. Got his leg caught in a cattle stop in Kaikoura. Won the beer drinking contest on the way home from Cheviot. Put his head through the bus roof and it cost him £5. Fell out of the Great Northern Hotel window on a Friday night and got his thumb severely bitten at a handler on Saturday. Broke a spectator's leg while going for a try at Kaikoura. Ate the legs off a live crayfish at Kaikoura. Ran on the field and gave G. Smith a kick. Was found under the large covered table, in brackets, with a young lady during a police raid on the Great Northern. Was the redhead who jumped the tea wagon in the Adelphi Hotel. So all in 1921. So these rascals continue probably to today, but we all over social media these days. But nonetheless, anyway, that's my report.
And he emailed me and said, do you know who the redhead was?
Speaking.
No, sorry.
Otherwise he's Irish. There's someone else.
It was the Cheviot guys who had to beat them. Sorry, Vince.
There's a rugby club all keen to take over because I'm reading the report that say they want the gift or not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that.
they do want the.
There's been a discussion, Karen, you might want to take.
Yes, and Dan's effort was very hard to follow for me, so I'm just going to bring us all back. Basically, the context for this is that it's always been an anomaly that the kitchen is owned by the council. And it's been a very kind of clunky and administratively difficult thing for the Reserve Advisory Group because, you know, the majority of the building, as you'll know, is owned by the United Rugby Club. The Squash Club have got their courts attached to the back of the building. They also use this kitchen. But the kitchen, which has you know, long been a commercial kitchen, I don't know if it still meets that criteria, but you know, it's been hired out at different times, and the Reserve Advisory Group have had to invoice that and so on. So it's always been a bit awkward. It came to a head last year when you might think quite a random and unrelated thing happened. There was an upgrade to the power supply for the powered sites or points which were actually for the AMP show, but also used for campers there. And they upgraded and added some powered meters, and that led to some changes in the meter board and the way the park's metered. And there are lots of different clubs. There's a gym there in the Scout Den, and I think there's something like 5 or 6 different meters. And all of a sudden, randomly, the Squash Club got a bill for many hundreds of dollars for power, which clearly they hadn't used. And basically this precipitated the thing of the Reserve Advisory Group treasurer tearing her hair out and spending many hours, I think, dealing with Joanne on the finance side, trying to figure out this whole thing. And it was decided actually in the context of all of that, the rugby club are very happy to receive the kitchen. They would actually like to upgrade aspects of the kitchen, but they haven't owned it. So obviously they're not in a position to do that. and the squash club. So there was a meeting with the rugby club and the squash club and the reserve advisory group. And this was all worked through, so everybody's in agreement with it's happening. We just needed to formalise that in some way. So yes, I'm really happy to take any other questions or comments in relation to this, but if there are none, I'd certainly like to move this recommendation.
That's great. Thanks, Karen. Thank you, Dan. I was happy to people that will that. Thank you.
I just have a question of clarity, I guess. I have no issue with seconding once my question's answered. I just wondered, I didn't see any reference in here to the council disposal policy and whether that was relevant and whether the gifting adhered to that policy.
No, that probably will be, but the policy talks about gifting.
Yes, and I couldn't find it, I did look.
But yeah, I don't think we went, well, I don't think the team went down that road to highlight it in here because we can't categorically state that it's councils or not.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption.
Yeah, in that case, I just wanted to clarify that, then I'm more than happy to second the recommendation as it's written.
So we're going to move on, Karen, we're going to second it, Pauline. Can I just, for future reference, we need to make sure that it's actually called the United Rugby Club. I think that's really, really important from a community perspective, just not a local issue. But mover and a seconder, all in agreement to that, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, that's carried, thank you. That's great, thanks Dan, appreciate that. And that takes us to our final decision item, which is 5.7, an additional independent member. So Graham, are you going to speak to this from a governance perspective?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, my team leader wrote this report, but she's on leave today, so I'll present it. She wrote the report on the request of the Hurunui Committee for conveying a recommendation from the committee about its membership. So she's provided background to the matter and there. She's also outlined the options that the council has to, if you like, achieve a similar goal to what the committee is seeking. So there are different options there. So I understand Councillor Armstrong will speak to this and she knows more about the information, but I'm happy to answer any questions about the process. And would point out that although this is slightly unusual, the council under the ability to appoint any member to any committee. It's just looking at the wording before, if they consider that that person has the skills, attributes, or knowledge that will assist the work of the committees. So it certainly falls within the ability of what the council can do here. So that's probably what I have to say, Madam Mayor. Happy to take any process type questions.
Cool. Thank you. Karen, do you want to add anything to that discussion? Thank you, before we just open it up.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I would like to add a couple of points. I mean, I really appreciate Michelle. I think she set out matters very well here. And I certainly acknowledge it's an unusual request. But in many respects, I think it underscores the effectiveness of having designated youth voices around a community committee's table. Both Millie and William, the youth council representatives have been youth council representatives on the Hurunui Community Committee in Millie's case for the last 3 years and in William's for the last 2 years. They've been active and full participants in all of the meetings. They've supported the Future of the Halls project through social media and in full discussions with their peers. They've showed significant leadership during the open days and ran the interactive design kind of fly through display that was available, and a lot of people really appreciated that opportunity. So I believe the committee view Will as a highly valued member of the committee. They are seeking his continued participation, particularly as the Halls project is significantly advanced. And it's a journey that Will has been on from the outset. This proposal also ensures that the standard situation of a youth council rep will join the committee for this year, and the council really welcomes that. And in fact, I think Michelle notes in here, from the chair's point of view, Pete said it's really helpful to have a youth council rep that perhaps is at a year 12 stage, so that there can be some continuity to have them on for a couple of years. And so the committee is very aware that they're making decisions about the future of amenities for our area, and they feel that this generation are the people that should strongly inform that. And I think it's on that basis particularly that they would really appreciate Will's continued involvement. And they feel just because Will's not on the youth council for this year, but he's still going to be in the area, they would really like him to continue. And so they're asking, I guess, for the council to consider it on that basis. And so I certainly speak strongly in support of this, and would be happy to take questions or comments.
Thank you, Tom. Question?
Very good question, and the point that you asked it as well. Will William have voting rights?
It's a really interesting point. I think technically they're not meant to have, or there's meant to be maybe one voting right. But actually, the way the committee is operated, the committee have welcomed and sought actually that both young people voted. And the intention here would be that Will would continue to vote. You know, I think sometimes youth reps can be a little bit overawed, you know, in a committee like that. It's quite a big committee, as you'll have seen. I think there's 9 or 10 of us. All adults otherwise, and often older kind of adults as well, but you know, they have participated fully and have made some real challenges to the committee to think about what it is that we're really doing, you know, and brought us back. I think Murray's probably noted that too at times, brought us back to the reality of what we're looking at. So I think the committee would expect them to vote. That is how it has been. And certainly the intention here would be that Will would vote, or would be allowed to vote, to have voting rights.
I think that would be the intention as a fully independent member, that he will have voting and speaking and voting rights of right as any other independent member around that committee, separate. Yeah. So I think that would be the intention of this recommendation.
Yes, so I guess maybe that the thing is that if he's changing from a youth council where that mightn't have been as of right as an independent, he would have that right. And I think that is the committee's intention. They would like him to have that right.
Yeah, thank you.
So just to clarify, youth council members who are appointed to committees do have voting rights, and it's the intention of this paper that that William would have voting rights as an independent member. There was an alternative considered where he could have an advisory position, but the recommendation is that he has voting rights.
Second and follow-up to that is, I mentored William, so I would imagine that actually puts me in conflict, and I probably should stand back from this vote, you think?
I don't think there's any pecuniary matter involved with this. You know, I too supported William when he was chair of youth council actually. So, you know, I think we've all got, we've all, you know, provided guidance, and then the current youth representatives of council will provide that as well. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is a little bit aside from that, but I acknowledge what you're saying. Pauline.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Thanks, I appreciate your commentary, Karen. And I guess like you, I've had the experience of having a very capable youth voice around the South Ward committee table, and we've really appreciated that insight. And so I see it as really important. So I'd certainly support this. I just have one question. That being that I understand that our youth council representatives that we appoint have voting rights. I just wanted to check, is there is there anything age-wise that would prevent us from giving someone who wasn't on our youth council those voting rights? Because I'm not sure that William's 18 at this stage, which is of no consequence to me, but are there any legalities around that?
No.
Thank you. Fabulous. How lucky are you to have two? If we, yeah, that's great.
Maybe more. Just before I put it to the vote, just a point, I think, and it's on, it talks about in bullet point number 12. And it might be something that going through into the review, you know, like if there happen to be, taking this paper aside actually, if there are more than one youth council member on a community committee, they only have one voting position between them, and I don't know whether that's been really clear. And I'm thinking about our Haranui experience. I suspect that they have both voted unknowingly, and for me, I was unaware. So I just think that might be something that needs to be part of the training as we, and it might sit with you, Judith, or yeah, that if there happens to be two youth sitting that have been appointed from youth council perspective, that they understand that voting criteria. So it just, yeah, it seemed a wee bit, I think we probably.
And then there'll be an opportunity to talk about that at the next youth council meeting.
Yeah.
This is a report to the youth council meeting, seeking the appointment of youth council members to the community committees.
Yeah.
So that's a
Okay, but yeah, because
opportunity
yeah, and it's not actually in relation to this paper, but it's something that I think we need to be conscious of as a committee going forward. Yeah, thank you. Final comment? Yeah. Thanks, Karen.
If I may, I'd just like to float, because I won't be part of that discussion, but to just float the idea that actually, as it's written in number 12, I'm not sure that that would be beneficial to the committee. You know, like if you've got people kind of alternating attendance and voting, and in our scenario where we've got a project that's been quite a long-term project, I think that's actually counterproductive, and I think I would not support that as it's written. I think that maybe the committee could decide at its discretion, like have the guidance, but have two votes available if there's two people, because otherwise it feels like you're undermining the participation and the value that's placed on those perspectives.
It's a technical.
Yeah.
So the delegation comes from council, it's
Yeah.
not for the committee to decide, it's for council to decide.
Yeah.
So council sets up its committees at the start of the triennium. And council at the start of this training period would be one youth council member appointed to committees where they were available. And in this situation, they've chosen that two will attend, but there is only one vote. I think we have to be very careful with the democratic institutions that we use these sorts of appointments.
And I think, to be fair, you know, this most recent year has been an exception to the rule, because if every other community committee struggles to get a youth voice around the table, so you know, this is just, yeah. But I think it's something we need to just consider in the fullness of best practice, and it just, the issue is an alert for me, I guess. So who else had their hand up? Fiona, sorry.
I was just going to comment and check whether or not it's been seconded, but I do think one of the positives is being noticed. There's been a long-term project and working its way through, so that continuity and another young person coming in with a person, and it's only through until this election.
Absolutely.
So
that coincide with the end of the school year almost.
So that would give that continuity, and they could help and learn from each other and bring people up to speed. But I'm happy, if it hasn't been seconded, to second the motion.
Okay. And just to be clear, it's to the end of this trade, not the school year. So we're going to move in a second. Have you got a question?
Or comment, again, being simplistic and pragmatic and using common sense. Does it really matter if you've got two people there until you've got a real sticky vote, and then you go back to the policy.
Yeah.
So for a majority of the time, doesn't matter, you know, two of them would vote until you have something very important or sticky, then you go back to the policy, and the two that are sitting there have to make their mind up. Support.
Understand the context, let's, keep it.
Everson.
Yeah, that's right, thank you. So we're going to move in a second now, we've had some reasonable discussion around this. So all in agreement to recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, that's carried, thank you. Rightio, councillors, we've got no discussion items to attend to today, and we have two information items. The first, Graham, is your Lagoina request, so questions, but we'll keep you first and see where it leads us to do.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The normal list is provided in two from December. One is still in progress. As noted there, we're a 20-day working period, thankfully late, like we all do during Christmas, which is why that it seems like a long time for these ones to do. So they're all in progress. We don't wait for the 20 days, we just try and do as we can, but of course it reflects that starts our way. But I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you, Graham. Is there any questions of Graham? Would someone like to move then that we received that information? Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Pauline. All in agreement with that, please say aye.
Aye.
That's carried, thank you. And our final information paper today is an update from the Tourism Board. Thanks, Karen. You might like to just take us through the critical items of that paper.
Sure, thank you for that, Madam Mayor. So the second bullet point down there, you see there's a New Zealand Pinot Noir wine conference to be held in Christchurch this year. And the point that is a real coup, I think, is that North Canterbury wine region will be promoted at that event. I know Penn Nash from Black Estate spoke to how, how delighted they are to have this opportunity to put North Canterbury wines not only in front of this conference, but all the media. So, you've got, I'm not very good at wine, we call them critics, but some of the most internationally renowned wine critics will be at that, and that will be an opportunity for them to taste a number of North Canterbury wines, and I think they'll be showcasing our area as well in post-conference. So that's a really good opportunity for us, because this is, I think, the first time, as I understand it, the Pinot Noir conference has been in Christchurch, so that's a really good thing. And there's quite a few other projects that we're working our way through, and no doubt you'll see those coming in subsequent updates, but there's probably not too much else I need to say on that, and happy to move that the information to the
Awesome, thank you, Karen. Is there any questions of Karen? Well explained, thank you.
Through the chair, no questions. I just wanted to add to Karen's comment about the Pinot Noir conference. It's traditionally held in Wellington, has done so for 25 years. So they've worked really hard to bring it to Christchurch, and of course with our region right on the doorstep, the focus for that conference is hugely on what we have here. So it's really something to be quite excited about.
Yeah, really good. So Karen's moved the information we received. I have a second.
Yeah, happy to second. I just wanted to comment also the 21% growth in the Haranui Garden Festival in 2024. That's fantastic. So all these people, hopefully that's bringing people in. That's great.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. So move on a seconder, all in agreement and receive that information, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, that's carried, thank you. So we have no items to address in public excluded, but we do have a set of minutes that we need to process. So we will make someone like to move us into PD. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Robbie.
And yes, we just note the same reasons why.
Yeah.
Because we haven't provided a public resolution in this agenda, but it's the same reasons. The minutes, the item of the minutes. Commission.
Yeah. No, okay. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, okay, so you'll Like that, so we have a movement, a second movement, but are you all in agreement? Please, aye. Aye. That's carried, thank you, so we've got the minutes approved.